My wife cheated on me with our divorce lawyer, then accused me of fraud over a $250, $0 property settlement that she secretly transferred to her sister. Now she's threatening to take everything, and I just found out she forged my signature on the property deed. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing all this down, but honestly my life blew up in ways I never saw coming. It started with small signs, little things that I brushed off, Like Sarah, my wife, acting a bit colder than usual, spending more time on her phone, and suddenly having these mysterious late nights. She'd tell me she was working late at the office, but I could tell something was off. She'd get defensive when I asked questions, brush me off with a fake smile and a quick change of subject. The weirdest part, she started lying about little stuff, things that didn't even matter, but I could tell she was hiding something. It didn't hit me all at once. It was more like a slow drip of suspicion. Then one night I decided to check her phone. I know, big breach of trust, but I was desperate. I saw texts from someone named Alex, talking dirty, planning meetups. The messages were clear, she was cheating on me. My stomach sank and I felt this cold rush of anger and betrayal. I never thought Sarah, my wife of 5 years, would do something like this. She used to be so loving, so devoted. But there she was, sneaking around behind my back with our divorce lawyer, Mark. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'd always trusted her, even when she was bitchy and demanding, especially about money. She's always been obsessed with her image, with appearances, and she's a master manipulator. She'd lie about everything, her work, her friends, even her own feelings. But this was a whole new level. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I had to be careful. I needed more evidence. I kept digging, and that's when I found the real bombshell, an email from Mark, our divorce lawyer, discussing a secret transfer of a property worth over $250, $0 to her sister, Linda. That's when everything changed. I started to see just how deep her lies went. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively screwing me over financially. I remembered the times she'd insisted we needed to get a big investment property, and I'd always been wary. Turns out she was secretly transferring assets behind my back, forging my signature on deeds and lying through her teeth about everything. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she was planning to take everything from me. Our house, the savings, everything. While she was out screwing around with Mark. I was furious. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was about trust, money, and my entire life being manipulated. I felt like I'd woken up in some nightmare where everyone I trusted was a liar. I decided I had to do something fast. I started collecting all the evidence, emails, bank statements, texts. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. But I also knew that confronting her directly would be messy. I had to plan my next move carefully. I spent nights awake trying to figure out how to expose her and protect what I had left. The worst part, she kept lying about everything. When I asked her about the texts and the transfer, she'd turn into this bitchy, manipulative version of herself. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was just jealous. She'd twist the truth, blame me for everything. And the thing is, she's good at it. She's a master liar, a real actress. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner. I thought we had a good marriage, but it was all a facade. Somewhere deep down, I knew I had to get out, but I also knew I wanted to make her pay. She thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way through this, and I'd just roll over. Not a chance. So I started drafting a plan. I hired a private investigator to get proof of her affair, and I reached out to a lawyer I trusted. I wanted to get ahead of her, to protect what was mine, and to make sure she didn't walk away with everything. I knew she'd fight dirty, especially now, with her new boyfriend and her lie about the property transfer. I had to be smarter, more ruthless. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I was ready to fight for what I deserved, and I was done playing nice. The biggest shock, I still didn't realize how far she'd go until I saw the forged signature on the deed. That was the moment I knew I was in a war I couldn't ignore. And that's where I am now, standing on the edge of everything falling apart with my trust shattered, my wife cheating on me with our lawyer and her trying to take everything I've worked for. I don't know what's worse, the betrayal or the fact that I might lose it all because of her lies. But I do know one thing, I won't go down without a fight. Once I found out about the forged signature on the property deed, everything changed. I'd been piecing things together over the past few weeks, but seeing that piece of paper with my name forged on it was like a punch to the stomach. I remember staring at it for what felt like hours, trying to process how she could do this, how Sarah, my wife, could manipulate legal documents, betray me so blatantly, and think she'd get away with it. My hands were trembling, but I held onto the paper tight, feeling the cold reality hit me hard. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about her actively stealing from me, lying to my face and crossing every line possible. I knew I had to act fast. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, Robert. I told him everything about the affair, the transfer, the forged signature, and asked him what my options were. Robert didn't waste time. He told me I needed to get a hold of the original deed, any evidence of the transfer, and start legal proceedings immediately. He also warned me that Sarah was probably planning to make a play for the house and the savings, and that I should be prepared for a fight. I felt like I'd been punched again, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. Next, I hired a private investigator, Mark's office, of course. I needed to know exactly who Sarah was seeing, how deep her lies went, and whether she'd been planning this for a while. The pie came through fast. He had photos of Sarah meeting with Mark, the lawyer she'd been cheating on me with. They were cozy, too cozy. It was obvious they'd been sneaking around for months. I also got access to her phone records and emails, which confirmed my suspicions. She'd been actively planning her escape, using Mark's legal expertise to cover her tracks. She'd even been funneling money to her sister, Linda, claiming it was a gift, but I knew better now. She was funneling assets, hiding money, and trying to make herself look innocent while she emptied our joint account. I was furious, so furious I could hardly breathe. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face, cheat on me with our lawyer, and then try to steal everything? The betrayal cut so deep I felt physically sick. But more than that, I was scared. Scared of losing everything I built, our house, our savings, my future. And angry, so angry I couldn't see straight. I kept replaying all the moments I thought were normal, all the times I trusted her only to realize she'd been planning her escape right under my nose. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and numb all at once. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark, the forged deed, the lies. I kept asking myself how I didn't see this coming, how I missed all the red flags. But deep down, I knew I'd been blind because I loved her too much, because I wanted to believe she was different. Now that I knew the truth, I felt stupid and angry at myself for trusting her at all. Despite all this chaos, I knew I had to keep my head clear. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I started drafting an official complaint with my lawyer, detailing the forged deed, her affair, and her financial manipulations. I wanted to get a restraining order, stop her from transferring any more assets, and freeze her accounts if I could. I also decided to hire my own forensic accountant to trace all the money she'd moved illegally. I knew she'd try to hide it, but I was determined to find every last dollar she'd stolen or tried to hide. Meanwhile, Sarah was still acting like the victim. She'd call me crying, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and that I was ruining everything. She'd lie and lie, claiming she was innocent, that Mark was just a lawyer helping her with some personal issues, and that I was just jealous or insecure. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way out of everything. I felt a strange mixture of anger and sadness, anger that she'd done this to me, and sadness that I ever trusted her at all. I also started gathering evidence of her affair. Photos, texts, emails, all of it. I wanted to be ready for court to show her true colors. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, probably try to turn things around and make me look like the bad guy. That's her style, lying, twisting the truth, playing the victim. But I had enough now to prove she was lying. I was determined to make sure she paid for what she did, not just emotionally but financially as well. The biggest shock. When I confronted her about the forged signature, she looked me dead in the eyes and lied. She said she had no idea how that happened, that someone must have forged her signature, that I was accusing her unfairly. But her tone was defensive, her eyes darted around, and I knew she was lying. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I sat her down and told her I was taking everything to court, her affair, the forged deed, the money she'd stolen, everything. Her face twisted into a bitchy sneer, and she told me I was a jealous, insecure bastard who didn't deserve her. That was the moment I realized she was dangerous. She'd do whatever it took to keep her lies intact. So now I'm just waiting for the legal battle to start, for her to realize she can't manipulate her way out of this. I'm trying to stay calm, but inside I'm boiling. I want her to suffer, to feel the weight of everything she's done. And I want her to know I'm not going down without a fight. I've got enough evidence to bury her, and I'll make sure she pays for every lie, every betrayal, and every dollar she stole from me. This isn't just about money anymore, it's about justice, and I'm determined to get it. After I gathered all the evidence, emails, texts, bank statements, the forged deed, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I finally had proof, and rage because I realized how deep her lies went. Sarah had been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd been cheating on me with Mark, our lawyer, while secretly transferring property to her sister Linda, forging my signature all the while. It was betrayal on a whole new level. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. That sinking feeling of betrayal kept gnawing at me, but I knew I had to stay focused. I had to act fast before she did more damage. The first step was to file an official complaint with the court. I contacted Robert, my lawyer, and explained everything, her affair, the forged deed, the transfer of assets, and her manipulations. Robert was sharp and clear-headed, as always. He told me I needed to get a temporary restraining order against Sarah to prevent her from transferring any more property or draining our accounts. He also suggested I should request an immediate freeze on any assets she might be trying to hide or move. I agreed. I didn't want her pulling a fast one and disappearing with what was mine. While we prepared legal documents, I hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny. I wanted to see where she'd moved money, how much she'd stolen, and whether she'd hidden anything in her sister Linda's name. The accountant started digging into her bank accounts, investment portfolios, and even her side business. It was sickening how calculated everything was. I could see her lying to her friends, telling them she was just helping her sister out or investing in real estate, but I knew better now. She was hiding assets, funneling money, and planning her escape. Meanwhile, the emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster, angry, betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. Every time I saw her, I felt a surge of disgust. She'd put on the fake tears, the innocent act, and say I was overreacting, that I was just jealous. But I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the desperation. To cover her tracks, she kept insisting she loved me, but her actions told a different story. I couldn't believe I'd ever trusted her. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone manipulative and ruthless. One night I confronted her directly. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the forged deed, the money transfers. Her face twisted into that bitchy sneer again, and she spat at me, accusing me of being paranoid and insecure. She said I was just jealous because she was more successful than me, that I was holding her back. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her she was a liar, a thief, and a cheat, that I was going to take her to court and make sure she paid for every lie. She laughed, a cold, bitter laugh, and told me I didn't stand a chance, that she'd manipulate her way out of it, just like she always did. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, so I started recording our conversations, just in case. She kept twisting facts, lying about her affair, denying any wrongdoing, and pretending she was the victim. But I had enough now to expose her completely. I Also reached out to the pie again, asking him to keep surveillance on her meetings and transactions. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to move more assets or meet with anyone suspicious. I was determined not to let her get away with anything. Throughout all this, I couldn't help feeling a deep sense of loss. Not just for the marriage, though that was gone, but for the woman I thought I knew. Sarah had become someone entirely different, someone who lied, cheated, forged signatures, and manipulated her way into stealing from me. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I didn't see her true nature sooner. But I also knew I had to focus on fixing what I could, protecting what was left, fighting her every step of the way. The worst part, she kept playing the victim. She'd call me crying about how unfair everything was, how I was ruining her life. She'd pretend she was innocent, that the affair was just a mistake, that she'd never do something so horrible. But I saw through it. I knew her game now. She was good at lying better than I'd ever realized. It made me sick to think she could manipulate everyone around her so easily. I kept pushing forward with the legal process. We filed for a temporary restraining order, and I requested an emergency hearing to freeze her assets. I also prepared affidavits detailing everything: her affair, the forged deed, the money she'd stolen, her lies. I wanted to make sure she couldn't transfer anything else while the case was ongoing. I knew she'd fight me, probably try to spin stories, but I had the evidence. I was ready for her. In the meantime, I started making plans for what would happen if I won. I talked to financial advisors, looked into refinancing the house, and started to prepare for a possible divorce. I didn't want to be blindsided if she tried to take everything. I also reached out to friends and family, telling them what I was going through, seeking some support. Honestly, I felt pretty alone in all this, like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. But I was determined. I'd come this far and I wasn't going to back down now. I was sick of her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal. It was time for her to face the consequences. The court hearing for the temporary restraining order was a whirlwind. I went in with all my evidence: screenshots of her affair, copies of the forged deed, bank statements showing the transfers to her sister, and recorded conversations. Sarah showed up looking smug, trying to play the innocent victim. She had her usual bitchy attitude, throwing around tears and fake concern, insisting she was being unfairly accused of something she didn't do. But the judge wasn't buying her act. I laid out everything clearly: her affair with Mark, the forged signature, the property transfer, the secret money funneling. The judge looked at the evidence, listened to both sides, and ultimately granted the temporary restraining order. It froze her ability to transfer or sell any assets until the full hearing. I felt a wave of relief. At least for now, she couldn't do any more damage. But I knew this was just the beginning. Sarah was furious, yelling and crying after the hearing, claiming I was trying to destroy her, that I was just jealous and insecure. She called me a controlling bastard and warned me I'd regret all this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything: her lies, her sneering face, the forged deed. I kept thinking about how she'd manipulated her way into stealing chunks of our life, all while pretending to be this perfect wife. I felt sick. I trusted her, loved her, and now I saw her for what she really was: a cold, calculating liar who'd do anything to get what she wanted. That realization hit me hard, and I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger and sadness. How did I miss all the signs? How did I let her get away with so much? Meanwhile, the forensic accountant was busy tracing her financial moves. The report came back a few days later, and it was worse than I thought. She transferred nearly $100, $0, into her sister Linda's account, claiming it was a gift. But I knew better. The accountant found other hidden accounts, some in Linda's name, some in shell companies she'd set up. She'd been systematically draining our joint funds, funneling money into different places to hide it from me. I couldn't believe how organized her betrayal was. She planned this for months, maybe longer. I also learned that she'd been meeting with Mark almost weekly, sometimes at his office, sometimes at her own house. I had photos from the pie showing them together, cozy and close. It was clear she'd been having an affair since at least last year. That was the final nail in the coffin. I'd suspected it, but seeing concrete proof made it real. My wife, the woman I loved, was sleeping with our lawyer. The guy I'd trusted to help us through the divorce was the one helping her secretly transfer assets and cheat on me. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every day. The betrayal cut so deep. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I missed all the red flags. I kept thinking about all the nights I spent working late, all the times she accused me of not caring enough, and now I realized she'd been lying to my face the entire time. Her bitchy attitude, her constant manipulations, they all made sense now. She'd been playing me like a fool, all while pretending to be the loving wife. Despite everything, I knew I had to keep moving forward. I worked with Robert on the next steps, filing for a full divorce, requesting an order to force her to produce all financial documents, and demanding she return the forged deed. I wanted to make sure she couldn't hide or transfer anything else. I also started building a case to seek full custody of the house and our savings. I didn't want her to walk away with everything, especially after everything she'd done. In the meantime, Sarah's behavior grew more manipulative. She kept calling, crying, insisting she loved me and that I was overreacting. She claimed I was just jealous because she was more successful, that I was trying to control her. She even accused me of trying to ruin her life, as if her affair, her lies, and her theft were just innocent mistakes. I could see through her act now. She was trying to turn everything around and make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game. I'd caught her in enough lies to know she was dangerous. I also started recording our conversations, just in case she tried to deny everything later. I wanted to have proof of her manipulations, her gaslighting, her lies. I knew she'd escalate her tactics to hold on to what she wanted, but I was prepared. I'd learned the hard way that she was capable of anything. I was determined not to let her get away with it. Every day I felt a little stronger. The anger fueled me, but underneath there was a deep sadness. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I was fighting for my life, for what's rightfully mine. The betrayal was staggering, and I still couldn't believe how far she'd gone. I kept asking myself if I should even try to save the marriage or just cut my losses. But right now, all I could do was focus on stopping her from taking everything, exposing her lies, and making sure she paid for her treachery. That's the only thing keeping me going, knowing that I still have some fight left, and I won't let her win this easily. The legal battles kept escalating, and I felt like I was caught in a never-ending nightmare. After winning the temporary restraining order, I knew Sarah would come back swinging, desperately trying to manipulate her way out of everything. So I doubled down on my preparations. I met with Robert regularly, making sure every piece of evidence was airtight. We drafted detailed affidavits exposing her affair, the forged deed, the illegal transfers, and her ongoing attempts to hide assets. I also hired a forensic accountant to keep digging into her financials, every bank account, every shell company, every suspicious transfer. Meanwhile, I started to realize just how much she'd been planning this. She'd been sneaking around for months, maybe even years, slowly building her escape route. I found email exchanges between her and Linda, discussing how to split the assets, how to hide money, and even plans for her to move out of the house once the divorce was final. It was like watching a crime unfold in slow motion. I felt sick knowing I'd been so blind, so trusting, and that she'd been betraying me right under my nose. Her behavior grew more erratic. She'd lash out at me, accuse me of being paranoid, and try to turn friends and family against me. She'd call me an insecure bastard who was ruining her life, telling everyone I was controlling and jealous. But I knew the truth now. She was the manipulator, the liar, the thief. She'd been lying so convincingly that even some of our closest friends started questioning me, but I had the proof. I had her texts, her emails, the forged signatures. I was prepared to show everyone the real Sarah. The woman I thought I knew was nothing more than a con artist. One night, I decided to confront her directly again. I sat her down in our living room, laid out all the evidence, and told her I knew everything. about her affair with Mark, the property transfer, the forged deed, the secret accounts. Her face twisted into that familiar bitchy sneer, and she started crying, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to destroy her. She begged me to trust her, to believe she loved me, but I couldn't anymore. I saw her for what she truly was, a lying, manipulative bitch who'd do anything to get what she wanted. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I was going to take her to court for everything she'd stolen. She responded with her usual venom, calling me a jealous, insecure bastard and saying I'd regret all this. But I didn't care. I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I was taking control. I knew she'd try to fight dirty, so I set up recording devices around the house to catch her in her lies. I also contacted the bank to put a freeze on her accounts and worked with Robert to prepare the paperwork for full financial disclosure. I wanted her to be exposed, to be held accountable. The emotional toll was almost unbearable. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry every day. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see her true nature earlier. The nights were the worst, lying awake, replaying everything, feeling the weight of her lies crushing me. But I also felt a strange sense of determination. I was sick of her games, sick of her lies, and I was ready to fight back with everything I had. As the days passed, I saw her desperation grow. She was trying to manipulate friends and family, painting herself as the victim, claiming I was trying to ruin her life. She'd call me a jealous control freak, accuse me of being paranoid, and insist she'd never cheat or steal from me. But I knew better now. I had the proof, her emails, her texts, her forged signatures. She was a master liar, but I was finally catching her in the act. I felt a strange mixture of anger and pity, anger because she'd betrayed everything, and pity because she was so far gone that she didn't see how badly she'd screwed herself. I started preparing for the final court dates. I filed for full divorce, demanded full custody of the house and the savings, and requested a forensic audit of her financials. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements, just in case she tried to run or transfer more assets. I knew she'd fight hard, probably try to spin stories, but I was ready. I had the evidence, I had the legal team, and I had my resolve. I wasn't going down without a fight. The biggest challenge now was keeping my emotions in check. Every day I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and frustration. I loved her once. I wanted to believe she could change, but now I knew the truth. She was a liar, a manipulator, and a thief, and I was determined to make sure. She paid for her treachery. I'd lost my wife, but I hadn't lost my dignity. I was going to fight for what's rightfully mine and make sure she's held accountable. I didn't know how this would end, but I knew I couldn't let her walk away with everything, and I was ready to do whatever it took to stop her. The final court date arrived sooner than I expected, and I was ready. All my evidence was organized, every email, every forged signature, every bank statement showing her illegal transfers. Sarah showed up looking defiant, trying to maintain her cool, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She was desperate, and it was obvious she knew she was cornered. As the judge listened to our case, I laid everything out: her affair, the forged deed, the money she'd stolen, her attempts to hide assets, and her ongoing manipulations. I wasn't holding back. I wanted her to face the full weight of her actions. The judge didn't mince words. After reviewing the evidence, she ordered Sarah to return all the stolen funds, freeze her remaining assets, and immediately cease any transfers or sales. She also granted full custody of the house and the savings to me, citing her clear attempts to defraud and manipulate. The judge warned Sarah that any further attempts to hide or transfer assets would result in severe penalties, including potential criminal charges. I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. Finally, some justice, but the emotional toll had drained me. Sarah's face was a mask of rage and frustration as she realized she'd lost everything she'd been trying to steal. She yelled, calling me a jealous, insecure bastard who'd ruined her life. But I didn't care anymore. I knew she was a liar and a thief, and I was finally free from her web of lies. As I walked out of that courtroom, I felt like a weight had been lifted, like I'd been given a second chance, even if it was hard-earned. In the weeks that followed, I worked tirelessly to settle the financial mess she'd left behind. I hired a new lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings, and we managed to get her to pay back a significant portion of the stolen money. I also filed for full divorce, and the process was emotionally draining, seeing her in court, hearing her lies, knowing she'd betrayed me in the worst ways, but I stayed strong. Every day was a step toward reclaiming my life, my dignity. The hardest part was the aftermath. I had to rebuild trust in myself and others after everything she'd done. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. But I learned something valuable: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. Still, I realized I was stronger than I thought. I'd faced her manipulations, her lies, her betrayal, and I came out the other side still standing. Looking back, I see how much I've grown. I learned that sometimes the person you trust the most can turn out to be your biggest enemy. I learned that money and betrayal can go hand in hand, and that you have to be vigilant about who you let into your life. Most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about reclaiming your peace and integrity. I don't wish her ill, but I do wish I'd seen through her sooner. Now I focus on healing. I've started seeing a therapist, reconnecting with friends, and rebuilding my confidence. I'm not the same man I was before she betrayed me, but I'm stronger for it. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I won't let it define me. Life is too precious to be weighed down by betrayal and lies. I've learned to trust myself again, and that's the biggest victory of all. So if anyone out there is going through something similar, trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Sometimes, the truth needs a little help to come out, and justice is worth every ounce of effort. I hope my story serves as a reminder. No matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. You just have to be brave enough to take it.